Playing sports is supposed to be something that teaches your kids valuable life skills like discipline and teamwork, and it's supposed to be a source of fun. But youth sports have become something else entirely. Today, we're talking about why and what we can do about it with the author of Take Back the Game, right now on Maggie and the Moms. It's time for Maggie and the Moms. Sponsored by Tampa General Hospital. Youth sports, they take up our time, our money. They add enormous stress to the children they're supposed to be benefiting. Parents, guess what? It is time to take back the game. And the woman who literally wrote the book on how to do that is our guest today for the podcast. She is a mom. She's a coach. And she is an author of the book, Take Back the Game. Linda Flanagan, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So I love that you wrote this book because it's something that every parent who has a child who's ever played sports has noticed, has likely voiced, has complained about, has lamented, and maybe has felt powerless to change something that seems inevitable.
Yeah.
Is that the case? Is this something that this is just the way it is right now?
Well, okay. I always like to point out, like, sports aren't mandatory. It's not like going to school. So it's not inevitable or, I don't think parents need to feel powerless, even though I think many do, that this is just the way it is and that's the breaks. I think to some extent, there are certain things you have to accept, but there are ways to mitigate some of the extreme, out of control nature of it that most parents have a hard time with, like all the travel, all the money, the time. There are things you can do.
Exactly. And that is what we're talking about today. Before we talk about the solutions, let's talk about the problem, which you really lay out so beautifully in your book. Take back the game. You say it's money and mania that have made youth sports get out of control. Lay out the problem for us. What do you mean by that?
Well, so essentially, youth sports have shifted, certainly from the time when I was playing, and probably when you were playing, Maggie, from child-driven, focused on fun and participation, to performance-based, adult-driven, focused on skill development and performance. It's the participation model to a performance model. And this has come from, I point out in my book, three main factors. One is that it's a very big business. The youth sports industry is huge and growing. And so there's all kinds of options that parents are getting that they feel like they have to take because they don't want to leave their kids behind. The second is the shift in parents' attitudes towards their kids and childhood. I always quote Jennifer Senior, the journalist who wrote about this phenomenon that kids have moved from our employees to our bosses. And by that, she meant that, children are the center of the household and their activities kind of drive parent behavior. And a lot of this is because of change in family size, stranger danger, and parent anxiety about how their children are going to make it in the economy. And as a result of that, there's a sense that children's talents need to be cultivated at every turn, whether it's Kumon or Mandarin lessons, but especially sports, because sports are so prevalent. So it's the money, it's the fact that parents really feel anxious about how their kids are going to make it. And then the third is college, which is, obviously a looming problem for so many. It's a concern for so many. And particularly if you have concern about the economy, that you feel like your child needs to get into the best college possible.
Right.
And
sports might be the only way.
Sports they're an easier way, or there's reduced, slightly lower admission standards. It's a streamlined process, and there's money. So that feels like it's a pull to get into sports and start young, play more, and just stick with it.
And so what happens is, as you say, we feel like we have to start them young because otherwise they'll never be able to compete at that level. And we force our kids to specialize in a particular sport way too soon. I saw this all the time. My husband and I said, we are going to let our children, if they want to play sports, try them all to decide which one fits, which one is the most fun, which one do I want to do. What are parents doing instead of that?
Well, they're capitulating to pressure by and it's a conformity attraction, this feeling that they need to go along with what everybody's doing. Again, I mentioned the giant youth sports industry, the leagues and teams that are popping up all over. And parents feel that if there's a team for 5-year-olds, they better start with their 5-year-old because otherwise that next year their 6-year-old's going to be behind the 5-year-old who started the year before. So it's this kind of arms race of getting
Yeah.
started younger and younger so that they're not left behind. And, I always point out, I think that it stems from love and concern for kids, that's what is driving this, movement towards earlier and earlier specialization. But the problem with it is that it is not in kids' best interest to play one sport at a younger age. But it's driven by this feeling that they're going to fall behind if they don't, that their children will fall behind. And then it'll be this, one thing after another. Then they won't get into the good school and then
Yeah.
they won't do well. And, it'll all fall apart, which of course is not the case.
It is not in their best interest in many ways, right? Physically,
Right.
mentally.
Yes.
Can you speak to that? All the many
Yes.
ways why specializing in one sport too early is dangerous.
Yes. I mean, this is one thing that it's interesting because it's so clear among sports medicine doctors who have been saying this for years, and athletic trainers. This is a very bad thing for kids to do. It is not in their interest. They get hurt, they burn out. It's not fun. And what we've seen, if you look at the research, kids are getting hurt at record rates. According to one study, 44% of kids who played sports in 2023 got hurt.
Hmm.
And there's people get hurt in sports. That's fine. I mean, that's going to happen. But 44%, half of those injuries were overuse, which means they were playing too much. 1 in 20 tore a knee ligament. 1 in 12 got a concussion. So the injuries are both, somewhat run of the mill and overuse, and sometimes kind of very serious, like torn knee ligaments. And it doesn't have to be this way. And it's again like all kids would be wiser to play mini sports, especially the younger they are. If they're pre-adolescent, they shouldn't be playing one sport to the exclusion of all others.
Amen. Deanna, you have two daughters. They're active. You always are so good about keeping them active. You have a nephew who has now specialized in baseball. What are your thoughts on this? And as you approach just really your kids, your daughters are beginning to discover sports. What's your approach?
My approach is like yours, Maggie. I want to try to give them as many options as possible. But then I get nervous, which I think my question to you, Linda, is what about money? I want my kids to do more than one thing, but these sports are so expensive. I was actually looking at last night in preparation for this, how much I had spent on one sport, swimming. This season alone, not year, this season, I've already spent $600 on swim because you have to pay for registration fees and to be a part of US Swim. And to every meet is $29 and they require a meet a month. If you don't, you get penalized $100. If you don't volunteer, you get penalized $200. So what do we do when we want to give our kids exposure, but our pocketbooks cannot sustain it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of a collective action problem where, communities need to come create or encourage local programs that are inexpensive and affordable because, like you said, parents are spending a ton of money. Sometimes they're going into debt for it. They're
Oh,
not
yeah.
saving for it. They're not going on vacation because of it in order to fund their kids' sports. And, the estimates vary, but the Aspen Institute pointed out that in their research, parents spend $1,500 a year on their kids' sports.
I
Other
believe it.
estemates are
I
much
believe it.
higher. And the New York Wealth Watch survey said it was $3,000. And depending on the sport and your income level, it can be up to $20,000. I mean, there's no end to what you can spend. So we need lower cost, lower price options for kids in communities before they're in school and then in schools. And we can talk about those solutions later, but the cost is absolutely one of the big impediments, to say nothing of the time.
Yes.
Parents are devoting enormous amounts of time, which also is going to, by definition, exclude those parents who are maybe single parents, they're working all the time, you know.
There are so many consequences, both for the parents, the families, and the kids to raising the stakes the way that we have. And we're going to talk more about that after the break. We're back with Linda Flanagan. She is the author of Take Back the Game, and we were just talking about one of the many consequences of raising the stakes the way that we have when it comes to youth sports. Spending so much money and time on our kids to the point that it sometimes even bankrupts families. I have seen it happen, Linda, especially when you talk about travel. That is a whole other thing that I have to tell you, I wish travel sports were never invented, because I just saw the harm. My kid, who played Little League baseball and loved it for a while, would religiously go to every single practice. He would be at every single game. And then the kids who played travel baseball would only show up once in a while to play the required number of games for them to qualify for the All-Star game. And then they would get selected to play in the All-Star game, not the kid who's been there, not the kids who've been there all year long.
Right.
What message are we sending to children when we allow and further promote that kind of thing in youth
Encourage.
sports?
You're basically encouraging it.
Because the coach put up with it.
Yes. And, you know, wink and a nod, it's okay if you don't go to all the practices, as long as you show up for the minimum amount. I mean, I think one reason parents like sports or want their kids to play sports, it's not only for the team, the team community and that physical activity. It's also so that we have this idea that sports builds character. That you sacrifice for the team, that you're there for your team, you don't miss for your team. Well, the kind of system that invites kids, the so-called better kids, to miss games, that is completely erodes any notion of sacrifice or teamwork or do it for the team. So I mean, what are we doing?
Actually,
it rewards selfishness.
Wow.
And that is not, I don't think that's what most parents want out of their kids' sports experience, but that's the message they're receiving. And I just think it's something to be very wary of, that this idea that sports builds character is being undermined by this sort of
Are the
thing.
So-called better kids just the kids who have the money, who can afford to travel?
Not necessarily. They might be better in terms of they're more skilled because they've been playing more. They've had the high price coaches. And this is the rub for families that don't want to do this stuff, is that, well, if I don't do it, then my child's going to fall behind. And I guess my message to them is,
and give them lessons. It's not just enough to go to the practices on the side. You have to have lessons. Like, where does it end?
Right. Well, I think that it would be really helpful for parents to try to think of the long term, that this is in the short term. These kids the kids who've been doing all of this will have an advantage. There's no question they will. But it really matters. What matters is after puberty. I mean, there's some sports where the skill development is so precise that they really, like golf, say, where if they're going to ever be great, they need to start when they're young. But a lot of sports, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, running, certainly, you don't need to be doing it solely, in order to make the team. And most coaches want multi-sport athletes, players who've developed multiple skills. They're not just all about their not only one sport, but one particular movement in that sport.
Patrick Mahomes.
There you go.
Exactly. Most of the best athletes played multiple sports. I mean, it's just a fact.
Besides playing multiple sports, when you were a coach, who is the kind of athlete that you wanted on your teams?
I love I only coached girls, but I love the ones who were like competitive, who really wanted it. And it didn't matter how good they were, how talented of a runner they were, if they were competitive and they really wanted it. What you want as a coach is the players who are eager and who, of course, are respectful and all that. All the girls I coached were, but who want to be there, and that was always what I strive to build in my teams, is a sense that this should be fun. This is for all of us, for you all to get better and to feel good about the activity. Maybe you'll continue to do this. That's why I coached running. So, well, you'll develop this wonderful life habit, and you'll have these friendships, which can be so enduring. And and many running is, it's all about pain tolerance,
Yeah.
and many of them really did get that, and that's what coaches want, are those eager kids.
And they're eager and they really want to do it, and that's probably because it comes from them. And they didn't have an experience where it was the parent forcing and pushing and behaving badly at the games and at the practices. I think that's another huge problem that I have witnessed firsthand. How much of a contributor is that to the overall youth sports problem?
Well, I mean, if you think about it from the parent's point of view, if you're spending, say, $3,000 a year, and you're spending 3 hours a day on your kids' sports, you're really invested in that, the outcome of these games. And it stands to reason that you're then going to be, if you're emotionally invested, you're going to more apt to flip out if something, if the ref makes the wrong call, or if the coach doesn't play you. It's the stakes are so high, not only for the kids, but for the parents too, because they're so invested. So there are going to be more explosions in the stands, and there's going to be more screaming at referees. And that's what we've seen, that it has gotten worse. And of course, that's not conducive to what we want from youth sports, which is for kids to develop into good people and to, be able to regulate their emotions. And when the parents in the stands can't, and not just the parents, any fan can't regulate their emotion and not swear at the umpire, we've gotten something out of whack. I think mostly with youth sports, it's out of whack.
It used to be the unwritten rule, that everybody just has decorum in the stands, parents and spectators. But with the swim I was talking about, I looked, we have a handbook, and they are telling parents two very important things. Number one, we're the coaches. Please do not go on the deck and tell your kids how to do better, how to do this stroke, or go home and tell them how to do a stroke better. And the second is, you need to keep your mouth shut at the meets. Don't coach or yell. And we have these jobs, like I said, and I was at a meet the other day, and there was a parent yelling because there's a rule in swim that you don't want to take pictures of kids in their bathing suits, which makes a lot of sense,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Because it ends up on the internet.
Yep.
And she was yelling, this doesn't make any sense.
Oh,
and
boy.
she was embarrassing herself, and she was embarrassing her child.
Yeah, the poor kid.
And it's like, what are we doing?
What are we
Were there
doing?
any repercussions? That's my question.
So-
Did the parent get kicked out?
There are meet marshals, which are other parents, and some parents are too afraid to say anything. She didn't get
Makes
kicked out,
sense.
but there was a ref who was saying, ma'am, very calmly, ma'am, you can't do this. This is just the rule. And there are rules for a reason.
We had a dad banned from the Little League field after cursing in front of the children. And that's important.
At Little League.
In front of little kids saying all the words. Parents are a huge part of the problem, and we think that we're helping our kids oftentimes, and we're hurting them. Like, unless you're in the stands yelling, good job, go get them, like
Positive reinforcement.
But how many times do you hear, I don't know, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. At that point, do you think that's helping your kid? Why do so many of us do that?
Well, I think probably most parents know it's kind of silly, and especially when you're yelling, they can't even hear you. You're just yelling. It's like an emotional regulation. You're so emotionally invested in how your child is playing, less so how the team is doing. It's really about how your child is playing, that you're going to scream and yell and get furious when something doesn't go the way you think it should. And in my experience, or my understanding, the worst kind of fan behavior is at the youngest kids' games.
Really?
And that's when it's often high school kids who are acting as sports officials, which is also egregious. So that we're screaming, parents are screaming at,
Children.
teenagers who are getting $20 for, enduring
or volunteering.
abuse.
A lot of coaches are volunteers.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's awful. So there was soccer star Abby Wambach, and we talked a little bit about this earlier before we went on the air, said that she doesn't believe parents should ever be at kids' sports practices. How do you feel about that, Linda?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, I think it should go without saying that you don't go to the practice. Parents are under so much stress. This is well known. They're way too busy, frantic, working, trying to keep everything in, getting kids hither and yon. It's like the last thing you need to do is waste your time at a kid's practice. It's not only a waste of your own time, but it is not helping your child in any way, shape, or form. And it's probably annoying the coach.
But is there a certain age that you should let go, let flow?
Well, I think there are certain requirements, some depending on how little they are. I mean, we have like a U4 soccer thing here, which is for 3-year-olds. Presumably, the parents have to be there if they're 3.
Right.
If they need their diaper changed.
Yeah.
I think past a certain age, maybe when they're school age, if you don't trust the coach well enough that they're not going to be abusive, then you probably shouldn't be doing it.
All
But,
right, we're going to take a quick break, Linda. Leave it right there. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what we can do, solutions for all of these issues that we have laid out in just a minute.
Good.
Before you go, we want to make sure that you are not left feeling hopeless about all of this that we have talked about. Linda Flanagan is back with us. Take back the game. We can do that. We can do what the title of this book says. And that's what we're going to talk about in our last couple of minutes. So, Linda, we know the problems. What are the solutions?
Okay. Well, it's always harder to come up with solutions. But I think, there are solutions at different levels. At the parent level, I think, instead of feeling like you're just kind of a victim of the system, you can just like seize your agency. It's your children, your family. You don't have to do all of the stuff that is thrust in your lap as if it's necessary. You can say, we're not doing that. And I really encourage parents, especially when the kids are young, to not do all the extra stuff. Also, because once you're on that train, you're not getting off. If you're doing travel soccer at 6, unless the kid gets hurt, which is likely, you're going to be doing that until they go to college. So my advice is delay specialization as long as possible. If your child really wants to play, great. Don't play up. Don't play on multiple teams. Be mindful of the appropriate amount of training they should be getting because no one else is monitoring it. And the rule of thumb is no more hours per week than years you are old. Your 8-year-old should not be training more than 8 hours a week.
That's a great one.
Many kids do a lot more. And, you're going to have to police that because no one else is keeping track of that. If you want to like protect your kids, I think it's really important to give them to recognize your own agency and to encourage your children to figure out what they like and help them pursue what they like. There's so much pressure to be on teams. Sports aren't for everybody either, and that's okay. They may come to it later. There are many sports that you can pick up as a high school freshman.
Yes.
My favorite, running, you don't need any background.
Yes.
So there are other sports like that. So, I wish parents could just kind of take a deep breath. You don't have to do all this stuff. Fortify your backbone, seize your agency, and delay until it becomes essential.
My question to you too is what about the age? Like you said, there are these youth 3, 4. Should we be starting? Like I see these little kids on Saturday mornings that are adorable playing soccer, but they're just running around the field like crazy. Is that
they're just calling it soccer?
Yeah. So is that something we should be doing?
Well, I think what has been lost in all the organized sports emphasis is unstructured play. And kids really I would substitute that. I would put in its place having a bunch of kids, going to the playground with a bunch of kids and having them just run around and kind of figure things out on their own so they're not always following adult orders. There's so much instruction of kids. Just kind of let them be children and work together with other kids. And even if they're 3, 4, 5, 6, the whole idea of play has been lost. And children really need that, not just forget about sports for their own sort of mental development, their mental health. I mean, this is very well documented that the decline in play has hurt kids. So substitute the 3-year-old on the soccer field.
Our mutual friend Lenore Skenazy talked with us at length about that here on the podcast. In our last 30 seconds, the opposite end of the spectrum, when the kids are older, high school, and they can't make the team anymore, but they want to play, what can we do about that scenario?
Right. Well, I would strongly encourage schools, to the extent that they can, high schools, offer more low-key sports for kids who say can't make the basketball team. They're not good enough to make the volleyball team. And that's fine. If schools could offer more in the way of club or intramurals, that would go a long way to help those kids who haven't been able to make the school team.
Linda Flanagan, so much good advice from you. We love it. We know there's much more in the book. It's called Take Back the Game. So everybody go out and check it out. And thank you, Linda, for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you next time on Maggie and the Moms.